Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast. My name's Phil. As usual, I've got Rohan with me. How's it going?
Hey, good.
And today we are joined by Mike Hansen. Hey, Mike. How's it going?
Hey, great. How you doing?
Good.
The man,
Mike,
the myth, the legend.
Yeah, he's here.
All three.
That's it. Mike, you do work for Nabucasa, so it's fitting that we start off this little spiel. Today's episode of the Home Assistant Podcast is brought to you by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabucasa. Easily access your local Home Assistant instance remotely for a small monthly fee that supports the Home Assistant and the ESP Home projects. Configuration is done via the user interface, so no fiddling with the router settings, SSL certificates, or any YAML. There it is.
And that SSL is it's pretty useful if you're doing the voice stuff on the browser, right?
Yeah, I want to.
There we go.
I've got so many questions for you. I want to really dive into this. So, first, I think we need to sort of give a little intro for those that may not be recognizing your voice or may not have heard your voice, maybe read about what's going on, maybe even have read about what's going on this year. So, obviously, Home Assistant's focus for 2023 has been Year of the Voice, and Mike, you're really brought in on into the Nabucasa team and to focus on this for the year. How about before we get into the voice stuff and the shiny stuff, how about you give us a bit of an intro to who you are and how you sort of got here today?
Okay, so
smart home journey, or everything, right? Like
everything.
Yeah.
Well, to quote Dilbert, so there I am in my mom's fallopian tube. Right? But no, so I guess. Yeah, so I guess I could kind of start with Raspberry a bit, because that was more my start of my smart home journey. So I used to work for the Air Force Research Lab. So I got my PhD, and then I joined them, and we were doing some things that were AI-ish, like I suppose. That's kind of a broad term, right? People just tack it on everything.
Especially now, right? Everything. Especially now. Even tools that have been around for 5-6 years, all of a sudden, we had AI ever. Our product hasn't changed, but we're going to put AI in our name now, right?
If you do a matrix multiplication, you're AI now. I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
So back in the lab, I had one of my bosses who gave me some Raspberry Pis to work with, and he said the condition was that I teach a Raspberry Pi camp for kids, and so these are 10th graders. Yeah. And so I did that, and I was trying to come up with an idea of what to do. And I'd been playing with Home Assistant. And I thought, we should do like a Alexa style thing. This was sorry if I've triggered anyone.
I know.
I know. We've gotten used to saying Amazon Echo, but yeah, that's all good.
Well, we'll talk about that later about the triggering.
Yeah.
So I'm forgetting exactly which year this was, but it was pretty early on. So I found a project called Jasper online. I don't know if anybody knows about that. It's an old voice assistant thing, like built on top of Pocket Sphinx and a lot of old tech. So I get that on the Pis, and we got all the hardware and everything, and it kind of turned into a disaster. I didn't consider the idea of 20 kids in one room all yelling at microphones. Like nobody, it constantly was activating falsely, and all this stuff is just, it was a mess, but it was fun.
Yeah.
So after my experience with Jasper, it's like, I think I could do something a little bit better with and integrate this into Home Assistant. So that's where Raspberry came from. It was originally a custom component for Home Assistant pre-Home Assistant OS.
Pre-hacks,
pre-hacks,
nice stuff. Yeah.
So I think the first comment I got when I posted it on the community forums was, "Can it support Dutch?" And that kind of started my journey into it. Was like, well, I don't speak Dutch, but let me see what I can find. And I was realizing there was a big need for something that was not English. Everybody tends to focus on that. And so that's kind of where I started. And Raspberry grew over the years and started to consume most of my time at work. My bosses didn't really get it. And then when the pandemic hit, I got to work from home. And I started working more and more on Raspberry and realizing, this is just what I want to do. And when they decided to pull us back, I was like, I don't want to. I want to do this full time. So I ended up getting a job at Mycroft, and people can look up the story there. The company didn't make it. Things did change hands, so they're still going in some capacity. They moved over to Neon AI and Open Voice OS are kind of taking the ball and running with it. And so then very, very luckily, Paulus contacted me and said, "Would you like to be the Year of the Voice guy?" And absolutely, absolutely. So now I'm getting full time just towards this stuff, which is awesome. Dream job, right?
Yeah.
So, that's really cool.
Before we touch too much on the voice, so obviously you thought, all right, need can be good in Home Assistant. What's your Home Assistant setup today like? Are you like, you got an extreme setup? Have you got sort of like a basic?
It's fairly basic. I focused, so I actually don't have any voice stuff outside of my office right now because as soon as my kids started learning the wake words and stuff, they would trigger things, and so I've had to bring it. I just keep it in my office, mostly for turning on lights and various things, and then I'll most of my stuff is in automation. So I have like garage door sensor, tell us when we've left the garage door open. Tell us when we left the door unlocked, that kind of stuff. Mostly just kind of like a security mechanism for the house and some minor convenience things, lights on and off and that. So that I don't have an extreme setup really.
So I'm not going to see like, not going to be like Tony Stark's house where you've got Jarvis everywhere and you've already mimicked his voice, got it perfect.
That's right.
No,
now you're going to launch
nothing like, unfortunately.
It's so funny because anytime like anybody asks myself, or I'm sure Phil gets the same, I know I've talked to a couple of you guys like at Nabu about the same as well. It's like, oh, what are some crazy like automations you have? It's like, I don't know, man. The lights turn on when it goes dark. Like, it's right. Yeah. It's
or set a scene for Netflix or something like that. It's
100%. Yeah.
And I mean, some people, there's fun things you do, like a one-off thing for like a party or something, right? To do some fun things, but it's not like every morning you're going to say, let's do party mode or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But I enjoy more, besides having it myself, I actually really enjoy hearing other people's stories and seeing what kind of weird, custom, crazy things they come up with. That's actually more fun for me to see.
Yeah. No, that's fun.
I think Rohan and I always like enjoy listening to.
That's why we do this.
Yeah, right. Like there's so many ways to skin a cat, and also there's so many cats to be skinned. Apparently,
it's getting really morbid.
That's it. All right. So should we start on some of the fun stuff? So this year, Year of the Voice. I guess, did you have a conversation like last year with Paulus? Like, is this something that Nabucasa wanted to go through themselves, or were you sort of already working closely with Home Assistant and sort of thought, no, I think this is a good idea, let's sort of work together? How did it sort of come about that 2023 is the Year of the Voice?
It sounded like Paulus, that was his plan, was 2023 was going to be the Year of the Voice, whether it was me or somebody else. Like, he was going to find somebody, and so he reached out, and it was fortunate that like things at Mycroft were starting to fall apart. And so fortunate in that sense, it's unfortunate for the company itself. But that I was able to take that opportunity. Mm-hmm. And so I think the plan was always Year of the Voice was going to be 2023. Not everything has been planned out as to exactly what that means. I mean, that's largely dependent on what we can accomplish. And we'll get into that.
Right now you've got a few voice projects going on. So you've got just a few, right? So I remember we've talked about a couple of them on the podcast. I know you've had some shout outs for people that you wanted to do, get some intents. So the way people speak to their voice assistants, how can we structure that in different languages? Because I think your goal is to cover off as many languages as possible, all in an open source way. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's correct. And that's actually been a major constraint on the project. People every day come to me and say, "Oh, why don't you use this cool AI model?" And I say, "Well, that's great. It's just it only works for English. It only works for German or something." And the goal here was to support every language. So we're starting with something more restrictive, which is it's template matching in the intents right now, which is not very sophisticated. But the idea was these templates, they can, you bring a sentence in, like turn on the lights, and it will match or not match. But the templates also go the other direction, which is something that people may not realize. You can actually use the templates to generate all possible, ways of saying a particular sentence. And then the goal is to take that and use that as a training data set for a machine learning system that's much, much smarter, for a particular language. So you can train a system in English using all those possible sentences that include your entity and area names. And then that should be able to recognize much more, open-ended sentences in the future.
So how does that work for like creating, like, let's say some kind of an offshoot of a language, or like a very specific dialect of a language, and like stuff like that? Like, is that something very difficult to achieve now that you've got this kind of system built?
No, you could. I actually proposed this as like a subset of English that was very, very constrained, like name on, name off, kind of thing, and that's fully possible with this system.
Yeah.
As long as you can author the templates, that's kind of, not everyone can do that.
Sure.
But you could really narrow it down. I'd like to keep the sentences. I mean, the sentences, I don't know, they're kind of getting more and more open-ended, which is great for a training data set. But I think it can also be a bit confusing for people to, what way am I supposed to be able to say this kind of thing?
Even with like things like the smart speakers today, right? The Amazon Echo and Google Homes, trying to, like, I always find myself, they're so, in one way they are open-ended in that I can say, turn off this light or turn on this light. But in some respects, if I don't say it in the correct way, like something else will randomly get triggered, and I don't know why, if that makes sense. So it's hard to sort of make like things too open-ended that it then gets ambiguous and stuck in different sorts of commands, if that makes sense. Like all of a sudden, I say, turn on the living room lights. Does it turn on the group living room lights? Does it turn on just the lights named living room? And this is the complexity that I guess gets for them. The company makes the decision for you, right? Google decides, and then of course it changes, behind the scenes over time, and you just have to deal with it.
Or
you get frustrated and assume the system's getting dumber, right? Which
people have said for the Home Assistant intents too. They're saying, this is dumb because it's not doing what I expect it to do.
Right.
But everybody has different expectations. So I guess one of the things we decided early on was, if you say turn on the living room lights, it's going to look for an area named living room. But it also will look for an entity named living room lights. Mm-hmm. But then if you say turn on the lights in the living room, that only matches the area, because nobody has, lights in the living room really as their name necessarily.
Right.
And so I actually think in this case, being dumber is smarter, because there's less chance for it to trigger unexpectedly something, that you wouldn't have wanted it to.
Yeah.
That is cool.
So many edge cases.
Oh yeah, there's so many edge cases, and then my hope was, then you can also customize these sentences. So if you have a particular way you want to say something, you can go add that. I think it's a little beyond what most users are going to be able to do by going and editing the YAML and that, but maybe that'll change in the future.
Mm.
Yeah. That's cool. So like when we're talking about like building these kind of systems, like audio systems and stuff like that, again, a lot of times people assume it's actually very heavy, or it's very intense, or very like costly to run. Mm-hmm. Right. And I don't mean like a dollars cost. I mean like a CPU count or GPU, that kind of cost. Right. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know you've done a lot of work around optimization and a lot of those kind of things. So
yeah, I think the hardware we have today on the Raspberry Pi 4 is incredibly capable, if you're willing to make some trade-offs.
Right.
So the intent recognition as it stands it takes almost no CPU to run. It's just template matching. It's very simple. The audio processing, when you're running Whisper, if you've tried it, you've seen that it's a bit sluggish on the Pi. Mm-hmm. But some of the other systems that are available, like older systems like Caldi is one that runs no problem on a Raspberry Pi 3 even.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but the trade-off you make is the open-ended recognition is pretty poor on that, but the kind of closed recognition where you say these are the only sentences you'll recognize, that actually turns out to be great, and you can get near real-time speed on a Pi 4 with something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. And I don't know how to ask this, but like, why is it so efficient?
Oh, because it knows like at every step of the way, it's very constrained in what it can actually be. So there's very few possibilities. Whisper, if you were to expand out, all the possible, sentences that it could recognize, it's just, near infinite. But when you do this constrained recognition in something like Caldi, you give it, maybe you have 10 million sentences that, sounds like a lot, but to the machine, it's not that much.
Yeah. That's interesting.
The downside is it only recognizes certain sentences that you give it, and unless you take special care, it will only it assumes anything you say comes from that set of sentences, so it will go to great lengths to fit whatever you say, even if you say like, purple monkey dishwasher, it will try to match that to something, and you would hope it doesn't become open the garage door, or something like that.
Yeah.
So I've had some work I've played around with to get around that, where you give it another path that just has random words, and you can reject anything that comes out of that path in the grammar. But that's something that's kind of just a side thing that I've done with Raspberry.
Yeah, that's cool. And I guess that leads into how does accents play into this, right? Like, so you look at English as an example. You've got obviously the North American kind of accent. You've got British accent. I've been told I say a boot. I don't know, but like how does that kind of thing play into voice as well? Because I from this side, I'm understanding the whole template recognition and so on and so forth. How do we deal with that? Like, how do you know it's vase versus vase kind of thing, right? Like,
I mean, that all comes in the speech to text system, so that's before it ever reaches the template matching. And there, it's just a matter of training data. If you have training data with lots of different accents, then you obviously get better speech to text. I'm not. Yeah, the term accent is actually interesting because digging into the underlying pieces in the speech to text system, there's no actual definition of the language itself, and what it's not like there's a this is English and everything that deviates from it is an accent. It's all like this continuum, and even between languages. I think a great linguist once said that if aliens came to Earth, they'd think we were all actually speaking the same language, and it's just us who were so finely tuned that we can hear the differences.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of fun stuff with the phonetics and phonemics underneath that make it so that accents don't really exist. It's just I use this phoneme set and you tend to use this phoneme set kind of thing.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I guess because it's more accents are really sometimes more inflections or like whatever how you say words, right? So it's interesting.
Well, in some cases, for some languages, like timing is important. So Italian has more of a rhythmic component to it, and so that can be an accent too, right? Where you screw up the timing, and then literally, if you put emphasis on the wrong part of a word, then you can change its meaning in English. There's certain words like refuse versus refuse. They become different, and so that can make things more complicated too.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, especially when you're just compiling it down to text, right? And it's just okay. What's the actual meaning behind that? Right?
And even worse, most of the speech to text systems only give you one line of text as their output. So they've crushed everything down and made a lot of assumptions on the way. There are some other systems that give you a bunch of different possibilities. Of course, what are you supposed to do with? I have 100 different possibilities. How am I supposed to guess which one is the right one? You can run them all through the template system and see if any match. Is one option.
Might take a bit.
But Whisper has been trained on so many hours of varied data that it seems to work great for most accents, for at least for the top 5 languages or so.
Sure.
I remember,
That's pretty
I don't
cool.
know if you guys did this, but when sort of like voice to text was sort of just coming out back in, early years, maybe even late 90s or something, you would train your computer on how to listen to your voice. Like I'm thinking there was a software called Dragon Naturally Speaking where you would have to, they would give you like paragraphs of text that you would then have to train your voice model on to then sort of tune to your exact voice, right? And then of course you would then dictate the Word documents or whatever, and it would be complete garbage anyway. But
Yeah,
that's
Caldy has that capability for tuning, which I haven't taken advantage of yet. To my knowledge, there's nothing like that for Whisper, unfortunately. But I think it would be a big benefit. It's a huge boost in the wake word stuff that we can talk about at some point here.
Yeah, definitely want to get into
have a couple of actual samples. Because it's not only good for just your voice, but it's really the combination of your voice and your recording environment. Because that can make a huge difference as to where your microphone is in the room, the acoustics of the room, and so on.
Yeah, sometimes you have like noise reflection, or you have whatever, right? Like echoes, right? But that's interesting. I never thought of it that way too. Yeah, because you want to train it to locally whatever noise is around you.
Yeah.
And then there's TV noise and all of that kind of stuff too, right? Like
and then there's you move in the room too, right? And so you gotta do that as well.
Yeah,
and then you got to get your partner to do it, and all that.
Yeah, and then any potential guests or stuff like that. But it's not feasible to sit there and train every single person that walks into your house to be like, okay, say these 17 sentences now, right?
No, you just tell them you're going to be a second tier,
that's right. That's
person
right.
here in this house. I'm sorry, it's going to recognize me.
Exactly. Have a disclaimer when they walk in the house. But that's funny. So I mean, let's talk about bringing this into Home Assistant now, right? So we've talked a bit about how it's built and what some of that work you've done is. How are we pulling it all together, and where are we going with this?
I mean, I think it all coming together will be the voice satellite or satellites. Mm-hmm. So, we started off building with the intent recognition, and then we added the, speech to text, text to speech. I can talk more about Piper and stuff at some point if we want.
Yeah.
And then the follow on to that is going to be the wake word with voice satellites. Because I think that's going to be where most people are going to actually use it. They're going to have a satellite of some kind or multiple satellites in their house, and it's going to be communicating with their Home Assistant instance. And that's where the hardest technical challenges are going to be for us, and we're working on that now.
Yeah,
because I think that's where sort of right now I think a lot of people are being held back, right? Like one, I think hardware is difficult in terms of. I personally, try and avoid hardware because I don't want to solder anything. I don't want to have to get into all that nitty gritty wires and all that stuff, right? And I think, a lot of people are also like, well, what's the quality like on these microphones, and when we're considering, I think it's also a bit of a curse in that we've been blessed with, smart speakers like the Amazon Echo and the Google Home that these big companies have spent a lot of money on fine-tuning their microphone arrays to listen to wake words and cut out all that garbage. And there's nothing, I'm guessing from what you said previously, Mike, there's nothing really open source that we can just leverage to do that kind of stuff.
Not to that extent. It's kind of a confusing space, honestly. Like, so there are chips out there that we're looking into, for doing the microphone array stuff, and and they do like noise suppression and echo cancellation and all that good stuff. That's great. And then there are also systems that will do wake word recognition that are free, sort of like the ESP based stuff. But the downside is you're locked into their particular keywords, and you have to pay them to get custom ones. And while we could go that route where we could say, all right, we're going to pay for like a a Nabukasa keyword, and then you could choose between that and I think they have high ESP Alexa and like some Chinese wake words that I can't pronounce. And we could say that's okay. That's going to be the thing. But I think for me, if we're going to do this, we should do it right. And the right thing to do, I think, for the Home Assistant community is to have wake word customization.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Otherwise, we're just what's the differentiator, right? For us. So we need the customization and we need the quality to make sure that we're not, it can't be the same quality as like this, M5 Atom Echo. Like these mics and stuff are not good enough to sit there, I think, and catch you on the other side of a room.
No.
Right. And that's why it's a push button thing. It's not.
Yeah. I mean, it's a size of like just a little bit bigger than like a YubiKey, right? It's like, they really are tiny.
Yeah. If you're not careful, you could swallow this thing, right? So
yeah. Yeah. Keep away from your children.
Or your pets.
Your pets.
And so, yeah, I think that's been the challenge is a lot of these companies, they have wake word engines that they have the secret sauce, back in their labs and whatnot, and they'll train something for you, but they won't release those models for you to train yourself.
Right.
And so we're looking into a project right now called Open Wake Word that has it's got this awesome ability to train not only from regular samples, but from synthetic samples. So this guy came up with a way to train from text-to-speech systems, which dovetails perfectly because we have Piper now.
Yeah.
And so the idea is you can use Piper to generate a bunch of samples, hundreds of thousands of samples with mixtures of speakers, and actually you also run like reverberation filters on it and everything, so it sounds like they're on the other side of a room or in the really echoey room, and
that's just so cool.
You just hammer away on the machine learning. So it's awesome. It works great in my testing. The problem is that kind of model will probably never run on a tiny device like this. It needs a bit more hardware. So we're working on ways around that.
Yeah. But it sounds like it really does come down to investigating hardware that can allow you to have, whether it's an array of microphones or whether it's, specifically tuned microphones. Sounds like that's kind of what you're trying to figure out right now. Yeah,
we're trying to figure out what's the minimal amount of hardware that we need that will still do all of the audio processing and run a machine learning model of this class where we can customize it ourselves and give the tools to people to customize it.
Yeah.
What do you have a goal in mind for what hardware you're trying to target for the ultimate goal of a system that can do wake word detections? Like, you're going, we want this to work on a Raspberry Pi, or we want this to work on a Pi Zero or something like that?
I think so. For me, the goal is to try and get this to run on something that will run ESP Home.
Yeah.
Because you think about so many of the aspects of ESP Home already do exactly what we want to do. We need it to connect to your Home Assistant instance, report like where it is, an area, and it needs to download updates to things like models. So say you ask it to train a new wake word, kind of thing. And it needs to go the other direction, upload samples to your Home Assistant instance because, for example, this Open Wake Word system also lets you provide a few real samples of yourself, and then it tunes the last little bit just to you.
Right.
So all of those things, ESP Home already does all of that. And, Nabukasa is a small company, so I don't think we want to support like a whole Pi OS thing in addition to ESP Home and Home Assistant OS.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
So I think, regardless, however it pans out, whether ESP Home gets ported to the Pi or whether we use other chips, that's going to be kind of the goal.
Interesting. So,
I will say that I have gotten the models to run on like an Orange Pi 02. So that like a Raspberry Pi 3 class of hardware is enough to do this. I've found it may not be the cheapest to do it, but it is enough to do it.
Interesting. And for those that don't know, Orange Pi is
it's like an
offshoot.
Yeah, it's like a competitor. I would not recommend jumping in and getting one. I got it just because you can't get the Raspberry Pi Zero 2 Ws anywhere yet. Maybe they'll come. Seems like they're coming back, but the Orange Pi, I would not jump in and get that because it's the software support is some Chinese company that's going to go. It's eventually going to shut it down and shut down the mirrors because it needs to go to its own like Orange Pi Debian mirrors and everything, and that's just not going to last.
Yeah.
When you're testing the local stuff, what have you found? Like, have you found the response time to be pretty good? Like in terms of processing locally, like comparable to an Amazon Echo or something? Have you found it to be slower, much faster?
I found it to be faster, honestly, than what I've seen people. I don't have any Echoes in my house, but from what I've seen people using them, it's plenty fast. Now this is assuming you're running like Whisper and stuff on something above a Pi 4. So I have this i5 based, Lenovo ThinkCentre PC that was like $80, used on eBay, and that's plenty to run all of what I need. So my testing right now has been with like with an Orange Pi 2 02, and I have one of those Anchor like conference mic USB speakers. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's worked awesome. Like I've tested it where I can have music playing at it and be on the other side of my basement and yell at it and wake it up. And so if you have that level of hardware, with the nice microphone chips, mic array, and at least a Raspberry Pi Class 3, everything's working great. It's just, can we crush all that down into something that people could afford to buy a couple of?
Yeah. Stick around the house, whatever. Right. So,
yeah.
I mean, that I do like the notion of having it local, right? I mean, just from a performance perspective, that means now it's restricted to whatever I throw at it, right? It's not restricted to, just crap going on the internet, like anything that's happening on my ISP's side or anything like that, right? So if my internet's down, it still works, all of those kind of things, right? So there's definitely a lot of pluses over there, right? So, but what are some of the cons? I mean, outside of you need to run something.
Yeah, so I mean, people who have already used your voice stuff from Chapter 2 have probably found out that Whisper will make errors.
Sure.
The Nabu-Casa Cloud stuff's based on Azure, and I mean, I've almost never seen an error come out of that for the speech to text. So it's excellent.
That's awesome.
And then obviously the text to speech is also far better than what Piper could ever achieve. Piper wasn't intended to compete with Microsoft. It was intended to run on a Pi 4. So there are trade-offs in terms of the overall experience, and I would say also in just the overhead in setting it up and managing that, right? So I really like what Nabu-Casa is doing. I mean, obviously I work for them, but I like that everything Nabu-Casa does, you can do yourself. What you're paying for is the convenience. You're not paying to be locked into something. You're paying for somebody else to do it for you. But if you wanted to, you can do it all. And I'm hoping we can continue that experience, with things like wake word training. So maybe not everybody has the capability to train their own wake word using this machine learning stuff. Maybe we can do that for you on Nabu-Casa side. But that doesn't mean, cool. Unlike, Espresso for these other companies, that doesn't mean we're just going to say, we can do it. You can't do it. That's not going to ever be the case.
Right. You're not locked into or like being extorted to do it essentially. Right. Like, I don't know what word you want to use, but
you're paying for a service, right? That should be the way it works, right? You're not.
Yeah. It's not that you can't ever do it yourself. You're not locked out if you don't pay, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
I think I'd seen in like previous podcasts where you guys are talking about the your voice stuff. The big question will be the accuracy and how the false positive rates, right? Mm-hmm. And that's going to be the most important question. My own testing has been good, but I'm only one person in one environment.
Yeah. For what it's worth, the Amazon Echo's accuracy, at least in my household, is fairly shoddy. So it's pretty bad, right? So it's especially, it's funny, especially the one behind me in my office here. It just randomly triggers. Like literally nobody has said anything. And like middle of the night, 3 a.m., you'll just hear like the ding go off of like when it
if it starts listening.
say the trigger word.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just like, really? Now?
I think it's something too that we're going to be able to do that Amazon wouldn't really do, or Google is offer tons of knobs to tweak, right? So you'll be able to turn this sensitivity here or this threshold there and get it to work just right for you, whereas they got to make something that works for everybody everywhere.
Yeah. And I mean, like we saw in some of the voice stuff, even with the M5, what's it called, Atom, you can also make it so you have to push a button, or you have to pick up the phone, or whatever that is, right? So that's a nice touch there too, if you so desire.
Yeah, there's all sorts of ideas we've had. I mean, these aren't going to be necessarily in our voice assistant, but others who can try this in the community. Things like, why not use a presence sensor? If I get close enough, then it's actually listening for the wake word. Otherwise, it's not. Or if if somebody's present in the room, then only it's recording, kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, there's a huge space of things to try that Amazon and others aren't going to be able to do, especially now that they're kind of failing with the monetization of all this.
Yeah.
I couldn't have picked a better year, right? Because voice, because they started realizing, I mean, if they're selling the hardware at cost or at a loss, with the hope of making it up, through, I don't know what the idea was. Like,
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
What was it? Did they really think that like giving ads to people through their smart home speakers was going to like incentivize them to go buy something?
I can only guess that they were assuming that there was going to be like a whole new ecosystem of like third-party apps, sort of going like the Apple route, right? Like, 'cause now you can buy skills for the Amazon Echo at least. You can buy games.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've seen, I think I mentioned this in a couple of podcasts now, but I've started seeing ads, when I say turn off the lights on the Echoes that have a screen, I'll now see, Amazon recommends these light bulbs. Based on what you just mentioned.
I mean, that's
I don't, not to mention, like a new movie comes out. Activate this screensaver or something like that.
Yeah.
So basically, just a billboard in your house.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I got the occasional ads and stuff where it's like, hey, here's this thing coming, or hey, have a look at this, like whatever, right? And I get it, but sorry, Mike.
No, it seemed like too that the most of the stuff ends up just being gimmicks for the voice side. So it sounded like most people just use it to, like Phil had said previously, ask the weather, set some timers, and then do some smart home control. That's 99%, and play music. People want to do that too usually.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think if we think
that's something. Yeah,
Home Assistant's got now they've got the media browser. So if we can make the media queryable, I guess, and put that into what's known, that's data's there. Home Assistant knows the weather because there's weather entities already. Timers, I think timers is what's missing. The ability for Home Assistant to just be able to set a variable timer.
Home Assistant does have timers in it, right? There are timer. Yeah. So we should be able to tap into that at some point. It gets. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. It can get a little tricky sometimes because you want it to be seamless. You want to set a timer and you want it to then give you the alert, on the correct device.
Yeah.
And so I mean the easy one is just to say if I set it from the device in my kitchen, it'll trigger on the device in my kitchen, not necessarily try to follow me around.
And then of course you've also got the tricky part of, where's actually the brains or the source of truth for this knowledge, right? Is Home Assistant now being the controller of the timer, or is the device that set the timer, holding that timer information? And does Home Assistant even need to be in that mix, right?
It doesn't necessarily have to be. I think it probably should be, especially if the timers get to be longer range. You don't want your satellite rebooting to erase all your timers, for example.
Yeah, that's true. Do you see a world where Nabukasa would be offering like a hardware version of a voice assistant that's open source? Like, because we've got Home Assistant Blue, Home Assistant Yellow. Do you think there could be a possibility down the line that, there would be a possibility where, okay, you want to buy this voice assistant, buy this hardware kit or this hardware from us, and it's got an ESP in it, and away you go? Is that something you would like to see?
To me, that's kind of the end goal for us is to. Now, do you mean one where it's just the satellite, or it's got like the Home Assistant hub inside of it as well?
Ooh, well, that's a good question. I think personally, for me, I would like a satellite hub.
That's what I think most people want, because you want to buy multiple satellites, right? You don't need multiple Home Assistant hubs. So that's okay.
I was going to say too, usually where you put the hub is in like, I don't know, in a closet somewhere in your basement somewhere. Like mine's literally in my unfinished part of my basement, my server rack, right?
Yeah. So the goal is to produce that satellite hardware that you can then you plug in, it connects to your Home Assistant instance, through whatever MDNS Magic or whatever they got.
Sure.
Oh, actually, through ESP Home, I guess would be just through whatever mechanism they use there.
Yeah.
And then you're off to the races. You either connect it to your cloud, or you say, okay, I want to do local kind of thing.
Yeah. That is cool.
Yeah. So there's different options, obviously, with how complicated that satellite could be. Ideally, it would have all of the noise canceling, noise suppression stuff, and wake word detection all on board, right? Because that would be the most efficient. You could imagine another world, though, where the satellite is fairly dumb, and all it does is stream audio to your Home Assistant server and put the burden there. I don't know that many people would want that necessarily, but the satellite would be way cheaper in that case, right?
Yeah, that could have some potential scaling issues there too, right? It's just, if you're running it on a
bandwidth, right?
Well, even let's say you're running it on a Pi 4, that's like, and you have 10 of these things, that's 10 audio streams that it's potentially having to deal with, right? Which can get, and then again, let's say it's a larger house, it's now 20 or 30 or whatever, right?
Yeah, then I think it's going to have to do the wake word locally to make it. Yeah, otherwise you're exactly right. It's just not going to scale very well, especially if you have to do any kind of audio processing.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, which, you would need to say, hey, I want to extract my, whatever wake word you use. Right. So that kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't like this idea of a hot mic streaming audio around my local network, even locally. Right. Like,
it
just takes one wrong bad actor to get into a network, and then they've literally got ears in your house. Not that couldn't happen with
exactly. That too.
Google Home or Amazon Echo, right?
Yeah, there's encrypted ways of doing it, but I still agree. It's more, again, that's more overhead still.
Yeah,
but
I think if given infinite time, one of the things I'd love to see is the ability to have speaker recognition as well, so that your kids couldn't open the garage door, for example.
I was actually going to ask about that, right? So is there any plans or is there any effort going into words? I don't know what the word is, voice printing or whatever it is, right? Where it's like, hey, this is Rohan speaking versus, a friend or my wife or something like that, right?
There's some stuff, not a lot that we've done so far, but there's plenty of projects that do this. The tricky part is kind of aligning all of the, how do I say this? Like different projects use different pre-processing on the audio.
Yeah.
So for example, they transform it into a spectrogram, and it's just kind of a summarization of the audio, and they process on that instead of the actual raw, wave data. And they all do it a little bit differently. And doing the spectrogram calculation is expensive. So you want to make sure that every piece in the pipeline is using the exact same format, and that's tricky to get going. And so yeah, there's the open wake word stuff has the speaker verification models, they call it, where it's tuned to you. And that could be a proxy for speaker identification, right? You could say, well, it had really high probability that it was Rohan, versus low probability that it was Phil. So let's just assume. But then if somebody comes in and sounds kind of like you, maybe your dad or something like that, then maybe not so great. But still, I think you could probably make a good differentiator between kid and not kid, right?
Yeah.
Although, actually, if you think about it, it's not surprising. There's not a lot of great training data sets for that because you don't want, like, people don't collect training data of kids' voices or anything like that for the most part.
Interesting. Yeah, because then that, especially if you have teenagers and stuff like that are trying to do, something that they're not supposed to, whatever, sneak out or whatever, right? Like it's there's no outside of having like setting a pin, there's no like good lock, right? Like
right. So that's
if it's a voice pin, that's kind of easy to like 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I heard that, right? It's like so it's yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to do there for my instinct for my house. What I would do is just not have garage doors openable by voice. I just have it just by dashboard or something. But other things, lights, no big deal. For the most part, you kind of want. I don't know. I thought about this. Like, what if you say, turn on all the lights? This is something we debated about. Should we be able to have that sentence?
Mm-hmm.
And I think what people mean when they say turn on all the lights, they mean turn on all the lights in the area where I am right now. They don't mean turn on every single light in the entire house.
Or every smart switch that comes in as a light and is connected to something that's not a light. And
exactly.
The fan gets turned on or something.
Yeah, but sometimes they might think, if they say turn off all the lights, then maybe they do mean in the house. I don't know. That's tough. That's where I think, you have a default and then you offer customization, right? Because you don't want to tell people how they should have their smart home.
Well, and there's, again, that's where scenes and stuff come in too, right?
True.
So like, hey, like TV time or whatever, right? Like,
yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about Piper. So Piper is obviously now we're talking about voice into text. Piper is the other way around. So going into So how did that project sort of come about? Has it sort of been born from somewhere else?
Yeah. So let's see, where did I start exactly? Yeah, this was back in the Air Force Research Lab. The text to speech on Linux has not been great for many years. The open source community kind of gets the discarded remains of what the commercial industry has done right over time, and they were stuck on older stuff like some of the CMU tools, like Flight, for example. These ones that sound very robotic. And it was around that time that some of the neural text-to-speech stuff was finally making its way out into the open source world. And so, I started getting into training those models. And the hope was to get it down to something that could run on a Raspberry Pi. And my first project was called Larynx, which is a part of your vocal tract. I thought it was a clever name, but it's very hard to remember and pronounce for people.
Yeah.
That's the PhD guy.
So Larynx started. Yeah, that's the problem. You need other people like Paulus to come in and say that's a terrible name. Pick something else. And Piper was
try again.
Yeah. If you've seen the Raspberry logo, you know too that I'm not great at those either.
It's funny.
Yeah, programmer art, right? So. Yeah, so Larynx was the start of that, and it proceeded at Mycroft. I reworked that into Mimic 3, and then after Mycroft, reworked that into what I called Larynx 2, which became Piper, rebranded in a good move. And so now what's happening? So Piper, I think, runs well enough on a Raspberry Pi 4. There are newer models that we could move to eventually that could run even better, but right now what we're doing is I've got tons of people coming to me. They're emailing at voice@nabukasa.com, and they're volunteering to read these sentences. So I have a website. You can go and there's about 1,200 sentences to read.
Nice.
And then they're dedicating these voice data sets to the public domain, and I train voices off them for Piper so that everybody can benefit. So the next version here of Piper in the add-on should have about a dozen volunteer voices added for different languages.
Amazing.
And some of them, it's going to be great. We've got, for example, some people doing Turkish and Hungarian, which there are just no open source data sets for text to speech for that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this will be a big thing for Piper, but also just for the open source text to speech community, because people are going to train models on this stuff, for far into the future for much better models. And I think it's important to be thinking forward like that.
Yeah.
I know in one of your speeches, or maybe it was a call with chapter 2 with Paulus, you mentioned that there is the ability to have, your own custom voice. Like there are ways to train your own voice. So if someone was to email you on that email address with the sentences that they've done, does that mean that you're effectively training their voice? Like when you go and use like a Hungarian voice, it would be in the sounding of whoever was the person that was training that data? Yeah.
And so it's been funny. I trained one guy's voice, might have been for Portuguese. I'm forgetting which language now, but maybe it was Polish, and he played it back, the samples I had reading different sentences for his wife, and she said she didn't believe it wasn't him. So
wow,
it was kind of cool. So these will be in the voice of the people, but it's not necessarily using their real names. I let them name the voice whatever they want.
Right.
And there's no personal information there. Although if you know the person, they might be able to guess. Some people are going through and training up their own Piper voices for other things. People really want, I just saw Amazon getting rid of the celebrity voices. People want that. Obviously, Nabukasa we can't get into doing that, but the tools are there. If somebody wants to do it, then
it would
say go nuts. And
be a great idea to get like grandparents or other relatives. Maybe you want to, for when they're not around anymore, have their voice imprinted so that you can get them to I don't know, speak, read storybooks or anything like that in the future, or something that's going to last forever, right? Like I do like the idea of putting a voice print up there and then just be open source forever, right?
Yeah. So I had my mom record a data set, for that kind of purpose. What's nice is you could use the website, or you could it's based on something called Piper Recording Studio, so you can just do it locally. Like you don't have to send it anywhere.
Of course, yeah.
The training is a bit complicated, though, I'll say.
Right, yeah, because I think I asked Rohan this question after the Year of the Voice Chapter 2, but Mike, which celebrity would you want as your voice in the smart home?
I don't know. I do kind of like the idea of having Samuel L. Jackson.
I was literally going to say fully uncensored Samuel L. Jackson.
Yes. I think that would be... Although GLaDOS would be fun as well. I think that would be kind of a fun voice. Yeah, I don't know. What about you guys?
For me, I think right now, Sam Jackson or maybe like a Cortana or something like that, right? Just like to pay homage to Halo
Cortana
series.
might be pretty easy to train, because you can already do text to speech in Cortana's voice, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I'm sure there's a way to make her say stuff.
I'm pretty sure there is.
Yeah, so that's something you could do privately. I'll say you could take another text to speech system, have it speak all of the phrases, then train locally. Obviously, the licensing on that is a it's
certainly
maybe violating terms of whatever.
Oh, absolutely. Because certainly you can get the Amazon Echo like through the developer tools on AWS console to do some say whatever you need her to say as tests. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you could just chuck in some stuff from the Piper Studio and away you go.
Yeah,
but
and
then I wonder if
a decent GPU. I've heard people say that they've gotten decent results on something as low as like a 3060 Ti. Even a regular 3060 might do it, but the Ti with the 12 gigs of RAM, like, you know, it's still a couple $100 cards, right? I forget if they ever drop the price, but I mean it's not terrible. It's not like, you know, you need a $5,000 card to train these things.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have anything like that, then just spin something up in like a cloud provider that has a GPU thing temporarily. And
that's right. So the next version of Piper here. So I've been working with these folks, and there's just like a collaboration, a bunch of text to speech researchers, including people who are in the blind community. They're very interested in this sort of thing.
Yeah.
To get, you know, nice voices that also work at high speeds.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the guys has developed a Colab notebook that will do all of this stuff. Like, you tell it, I want to train an English multi-speaker model, and you just, you know, click a few buttons and then tell it where your data set is, and it'll do the rest for you.
That's cool. And if could someone just use like a laptop to train these? Like, if they've got, like, do they need a special card or something? Or could they just use their computer?
They need something that can do PyTorch training, which you can technically do on the CPU, but it's so slow that I don't know how long it would actually take. Now, I should probably test this out just to see. You know, one of the things I do for Piper, I don't train all the voices from scratch. What I've done is I found really good data sets for English, because those are plentiful, right? Mm-hmm. So I've trained up these base English voices, and then I do what's called fine tuning. So you take the English voice as a base, and you then expose it to training data from a different language, different person. And surprisingly, like, you get something where you can hear the new voice in as little as like 20 minutes of training on a GPU. But it's not perfect. There's you know, errors, and sometimes the old voice breaks in. But overnight for me, you can get a brand new voice, which sounds great. That's on a GPU. So on a CPU, maybe a couple nights, a couple days worth of training, you might be able to do it.
Wow, that is kind of cool. It's we're gonna have all these different things floating around now. It's just need a library for, hey, what do I want, right?
I don't know if there's some way to do, like, you know, like with hacks and these other community based things. You know, like I said, Nabukasa can't officially say, you know,
of course,
there's this voice or that, but it's still like the ability for people to, you know, plug in a URL and use a custom voice set from somebody.
Yeah. And that's a good way for that way, you know, let's say somebody has something that they want to share with their friends that they don't want publicly, right? Like, there's that too, right? I don't know why, but if you want to hear my voice all the time, that just maybe I don't want to share that out, but it's you know, send that over to my mom so she feels like I'm still there.
Yeah, plug it into ChatGPT and
there you go, right? Well, that's a whole other can of worms for you guys right now, eh? Like, in terms of like GPT integration and things like that. Is that what's the story? I mean, since you brought that up, anyways, like, where does Nabu stand on that? Where do you guys stand on that? Like, or where do you personally? I
mean, so the OpenAI integration connects to, I think by default, GPT 3.5 Turbo or something. That's been a lot of fun for the kids, actually. So I've hooked that up to the phone, and I have it, you know, they pick up and it pretends to be Mario, for example. You saw the demo with that, and you do like Santa Claus and all these other things. So it's been fun for that aspect. It's kind of a gimmick, but I have seen, I have to send you the link. There's a guy on YouTube that's done a lot of work integrating ChatGPT and the OpenAI stuff to be able to do smart home control. Mm-hmm. And as I understand it, the way this works is you get it to generate JSON that you then feed into, you know, either through a Node-RED bridge or something into Home Assistant. And so I think there's a path forward there. The only problem is obviously you have to pay for, API access to get this to work. It's a couple pennies, to do it. But what I'm hoping is that as we go on, we've got this like llama projects and various things that are running. These are running like large language models locally. They're way beyond what a Pi 4 is going to do reasonably right now.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping over time these can come down. It really feels to me like in the next year or a couple of years, like I'm envisioning this Home Assistant box that has a GPU in it and a decent CPU and is able to do all of this stuff locally. I think that would be, that'd be a really cool goal and to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that far away, right? I mean, you've got like for example, like the NVIDIA Jetson Nano boxes that are out there and stuff like that, right? And they're relatively low cost, right? Like rather than buying like a full blown high end GPU, blah blah blah, right? So
yeah, it's just unknown how much VRAM is going to be needed on the GPU to host all of this stuff at once.
Yeah.
But it really seems like, you have Whisper coming in, you have something like a Piper going out that can run on the GPU as well, very fast. And then if you could run a large language model, even a low parameter, like a 7 billion parameter one, that was fine tuned to smart home control. I think that's the key. Like it's not your standard open-ended one that's supposed to recognize anything. It's been trained.
Yeah.
I feel like that whole stack right there would be I don't know, it'd be really cool. It could do a lot of things that we can't do right now.
Yeah, totally.
So where do you see? So we're halfway through the year of the voice right now. So this is what time this episode goes out to be July sometime. Where do you see the second half of 2023 leading you? Like what's your, to make 2023 a success? What's your things you want to tick off and where do you go? Where do you set yourself up for the next year?
I mean, for me, the success would be that we are able to get the satellite, if not the hardware out, at least have everything in place so that can come out next year. Because we want to get it right. If we're gonna ask people to spend money on this, we're gonna get it right.
Yep.
In the meantime, my hope would be also to get the wake word customization stack and all of that working. So if someone wants to build their own ESP home-based satellite, or even one like I did off of the, a Pi 02 or something, then I want to see that. And really, I feel like the people who are going to do that up front are going to be really helpful because they're going to help us test out the audio false positives, and everything like that, because we really need to make sure that is working great before we ask people to pay money for these satellites, right?
Totally, yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, with that, how can people help? Where can people help? If people want to get involved, what can they do?
I mean, so one thing they can do is help with the intent translations. So we want to get people, the most languages we can. So if they go to our Home Assistant intents repo on GitHub and help submit translations or new languages, like that's a first place to help. The other one is donating their voice. If they want to donate to Piper, they can email at voice@nabukasa.com. I'll train up voices and keep those coming. We're getting a lot of cool stuff there. I actually had a guy from an Icelandic institute. He just out of the blue said, "Here, I got some voices trained up."
Yeah, nice.
So that's really awesome. Yeah, the hope is, Whisper supports like 10 languages well and 20 languages not so well.
Yep.
So
yeah.
I'm hoping to be able to get into tuning that a little bit more because, you want the full stack to work correctly locally. So, for example, right now I have a Vietnamese text-to-speech voice that works pretty well, but speech-to-text on Whisper with Vietnamese is not great.
Mm-hmm.
So we need more data for that. If people want for that aspect, for speech to text, they can contribute to Mozilla's Common Voice dataset. I should say this right now because I get this question a lot, actually. People say, well, why don't you just use Common Voice for text to speech? Because it's got tons and tons of data. And I tell them they're kind of two different ends of the spectrum. Speech to text, you want lots of speakers in lots of recording environments with noise and everything, right? Because you want it to be a robust system to recognize. Text to speech, you want usually just one person or a couple people, lots of data on them, and very quiet environment, because the machine's going to reproduce whatever it hears, and it will reproduce the noise. So I've had, background vacuum sounds and birds come in as the machine. It has no idea what it's doing. It's just reproducing stuff.
Right.
And then if people, just testing stuff out is really helpful. Where we have people, because I can't test every single language. Having people come in and say this exact thing did not work for me. With these languages set and stuff. That's great information. That's helpful for us.
You mentioned you've got Vietnamese as a language that's almost there that you could just use some help with. Is there any other languages to highlight that are almost, have got some data? If maybe someone's listening to the podcast and they speak that language and you need some more, just to get that over the line, anything off the top of your head that you can give a shout out to?
Yeah, I think the ones in my mind right now are like Portuguese, both Brazilian and Portuguese, Polish, and Hungarian. I'd say those are kind of the three ones I've been focusing on recently, trying to get the experience all the way through working for people. And then in addition, then Vietnamese has been there. I have tried some work on Chinese on the various versions, of that. That one's a bit more, a bit trickier. But there I just need people who are native speakers to help me out to bridge that gap, to understand all the different nuances in that.
Yeah, of course.
I'm not a trained linguist. I only speak English. I took some different languages in college, but my experience growing up, I'm from Wyoming originally, the big square state. And their idea of teaching different languages was to have somebody come in once a week and teach us a couple Spanish words. And that was it. That was for growing up. So I didn't get exposure to a lot of other stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, and I should mention, there's a class of languages like Arabic and Persian, where there are some very big challenges that are interesting. There they have the challenge of when we train on text data for Arabic, for example. I don't know if you know this, but they leave out the diacritics, the short vowels in them, so they're missing. They're missing the short vowel sounds, and it's the human's job to fill those in. And it's really only children's books that contain the missing pieces so that the kids can learn. And so we're having to bring in AI models that people have trained to add that stuff back in for the trained data, and it gets it wrong a lot. And so it's a very tricky family of languages to get right.
So does that mean they need to read a completely separate set of sentences or what have you?
It means I need examples where here's the text as it would be written, missing the pieces, and I need the human to come in and fill in all the short vowels.
Right.
Because at every stage there's different vowels you could use, and they have different words that they mean, and the human knows, obviously it means this word and not that word. Yeah. But the machine is not that, right?
Interesting. Yeah, and I guess it's one of those you don't know what you don't know kind of problems, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
that has been, French was an example too of that. They have the liaison, like the consonant blending that happens, and it's tricky because a lot of these things I can't hear them. The French one I can for the most part, but there's others where I just can't hear the difference because I'm not trained to do that. So I'm relying on native speakers and community members to come in and help me with pronunciation errors.
Right. Interesting. Cool. And we'll leave links in the show notes to where to contribute as well.
Yeah. I guess the only thing I'd say is that coming from other communities and everything, the home assistant community has been just awesome to work with, and things have grown faster than I could have anticipated. I'm getting so much positive feedback and constructive feedback on things. So it's a very engaged community, and I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mike, we appreciate you for all the work you're doing with all the projects. Piper, how many GitHub repos are you responsible for now? Surely it's exploded.
There's like 100 at this point. It feels like every time I close an issue, two new ones have already popped up. Right? So.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, we appreciate you for doing all that. I'm
sure people are like, "What is he? What is he doing these days?" And I'm jumping around to different things. Yeah.
Really looking forward to seeing a device that we can. I'm praying for you and hoping that you'll be able to replace my Amazon Echoes at some point. So please keep up the good work.
Ditto.
And
we'll
leave the links.
If I disappear suddenly without warning, Amazon has got me.
What's her name? The little Amazon Echo lady's got you.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Cheers.